Hello, everybody. Welcome again. I'm joined by a guest who has not been on the show for quite a while. Say hi, Mark.
Hello.
Good. Mark, what was the last one you were on? We talked about Sonic characters or some nonsense, I believe.
Yeah, the Hindenburg that is the Sonic franchise that
Yes.
I refuse to bail out of for some reason.
We might do a Sonic month at some point, in which case I'm sure I'll have you on for one of those. We're tired because we've been up late animating and shit on two very different things. But I wanted to bring Mark on board this particular topic. Again, another one I've been sitting on, as I often do, for a while. This one was submitted by Punk Rocks and Soda on Tumblr, saying, "Hey, Kerr, big fan for a long time. Here's my question for you that hopefully gets into a Kerr blog. I wanted to know what your personal opinions are on like nerd culture, the direction it's been going in, and like what do you think qualifies people into that personality type?" Okay, so Mark,
Oh, oh, is that the
hold on.
plan?
Mark, please answer. Um, what even is nerd culture?
Nerd culture is the uncool kids. I mean, nerd like what? Um, like I've been wearing the badge of nerd long before nerd became a protected class, right as we had a zero tolerance policies in school, Um, it's a rich tapestry. Like I always refer to it as like the tapestry of nerd. Like if something's cult, then it only has one patch in the quilt of nerd, as opposed to a franchise that has like multiple patches. So it's just the thing that it's the things that make up the big mosaic that is you, or the mosaic that's supposed to be you, that most other people just kind of look at and go, no.
It's funny because when I now in this day and age, when I think of like nerd culture, I think of like those type of, and I'm not even going to name any names because I don't want to burn no bridges, and I don't know really how this stuff goes on behind the scenes, but I think of like those kind of like shows that are like, yeah, we're geeks and we're proud of it and blah blah blah. And
No, 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 don't even
yeah.
go
And,
into
and
that.
see for me, like, okay, so I didn't even think of myself as a young child as particularly a nerd or a geek or whatever. Like I was definitely an outcast, an outcast of some kind because I was an artist. But I don't know. And you and I mean, we're both big fans of anime and video, or not even animation in general and video games and things like that. I guess the things that could be considered nerdy. But the weird kind of thing that's happened now is like, oh no, those things are cool and geeks can be hot and hip and
Oh,
all this nonsense. And so
that
I don't know. I don't think about it. So I don't really know, which is part of the reason why I brought you on this one because I feel like you at least have somewhat of a better understanding of like the nuts and bolts of this, I guess you could say.
it's fairly existential. I don't know. I mean, it's always the things that have set an entire group of people apart. Just like there was a group of people in high school that were like, I hate my parents and everything's meaningless. Um, like I've seen all types of people walking through my life, and like you can really be nerdy about anything. Like Bennett the Sage, who I work with, he's a sports nerd. Like very specifically, he's a baseball nerd. We recently admitted on our podcast that, well, I got him to admit that he likes nerdy things, but he's not a nerd, and that came from a place of, this is not the entirety of what I am. Like from the beginning of him to the end of him, specifically speaking, like anime and baseball and video games are not the only things that he is as a human being.
Yeah. I don't think any one person can be. It's funny too because okay, really I think the answer is that it's just that a lot of these things that we grew up with that we were like that were special to us, they've just over time they've become a lot more mainstream. It's like I mean video games I think being the primest example of all and that like, gaming was a thing that like you were just oh you're a computer geek, like you're that stupid cartoon ass stereotypical, pocket protector kind of bullshit. But now it's like anything from Resident Evil to Call of Duty to Street Fighter or whatever, has like a mainstream audience of people who are not just that. They're just like, I just like this game and I'm gonna play it, and it's even if they didn't necessarily grow up with it or whatever. Or like, video games have become like a big decompressant for people who have just like normal 9 to 5 working hour kind of jobs and things.
Yeah, I think that I think that there's multiple levels of being a geek or a nerd. How you have like functional, like in the same way that you can have a functional alcoholic, for instance, where there's functional nerds who can, just move throughout the world and be okay. And when they meet another nerd, they're, I don't know, Nick Frost once referred to it when he describes how he met Simon Pegg was like he sprayed me with his nerd musk. Uh,
That's good.
um, but you always kind of recognize one of your own in one of a few ways, and I always kind of say that one of the best ways is t-shirts. Like I wear t-shirts that aren't like big billboards of like I love this thing. I wear really subtle t-shirts that are only emblems, no wording or anything like that, and if
You,
someone
you,
actually
you've
recognizes
made
what
some,
it
you've
is.
made some good friends in that way. I know.
Yeah, I have in fact. But I always feel like a good subtle T-shirt is always kind of like the nerd's secret handshake.
Uh-huh.
So like you can always kind of recognize your own, and they'll gravitate towards you. It never really takes very long, even though when we were growing up, it was a whole lot harder because we were much the distance between us was much larger because of the lack of the internet at the time. In my day, we only had the AOL and we had to buy minutes.
It's funny too because I feel like there's this sense of like bravado of like oh I can't be I have to be like ashamed to like this. Like, Dragon Ball is one of the biggest things that I am a nerd about. And anytime I ever meet somebody that I know is like really deep into it and I can like that really knows like the lore of it and they know the source material really well. It's super exciting for me that I can actually get into that. And I never feel like, oh, I'm embarrassed to admit this, like that I don't I don't really like this show or I like it, but it's a guilty pleasure. It's like, no, I could sit here and tell you why I think it's a good show and therefore why it is so successful, worldwide.
Yeah.
It's the number 2 most successful anime property in the world, next only to Pokemon. And Pokemon was another thing. It's like it's funny to see like I was ridiculed for liking Pokemon for more than just the year that it was the thing that took over the goddamn world. And then by the time the episodes that I had worked on voiceover wise, in like 2010 were airing, suddenly everybody that I'm going to college with is playing Pokemon again, and I'm like, what's going on right now?
Yeah, that's what it was. It was the secret addiction that nobody wanted to admit to because at the time, still, like even when Pokemon first came out, gaming was still not the thing to be doing if didn't have class. But honestly, that does bring me to a point that when I really do talk about functional versus non-functional, like you talk about how much it is that about, say, Dragon Ball, or how much about Pokemon, and there is an army of walking encyclopedias amongst the culture that we live in. And the thing is that, like once you get through all of the functional people who are complete human beings who you can talk to about just about anything, then you have the incomplete human beings that are non-functional. And I think that's where, like that's where a lot of people are still running into problems. That's where a lot of our stereotypes are still coming from. Like I thoroughly hate Sheldon Cooper as a character. I thoroughly hate Moss from the IT Crowd, which I don't know if you've seen it. Um,
Is he the dude with the really gnarly sideburns, or is that somebody else?
no, he's got like he's got like a Pac-Man haircut.
Oh, I don't even remember. No, then I haven't seen him. I apologize.
I recommend it. It's really funny. But this idea of this non-functional, socially awkward, has no sense of social cues type of character. Like we all sit back and we laugh and, oh, like Sheldon's so funny or Moss is so funny. But the thing is that we kind of move through things like cons, comic book shops, and video game stores to our daily lives, and we just kind of separate ourselves from those non-functional people and go like, well, at least I'm not that bad.
I think, yeah, I mean, maybe that's the source of it because it's like, okay, here's something that just happened recently. So, a friend of mine who may or may not have been on another curb blog before, whose name rhymes with Deadward Fosco. So he's a big sport nut, like a major sports nut, and he often tells me, if I'm remembering correctly, that he's like, oh no, I'm not really an anime fan, and no, I don't really like anime all that much, etc. And then I was talking with Kira Rina-chan, who, way back in the day used to be like a major Inuyasha fan. And I forget. Oh, we were talking about some voice actor that was in the show. Duh, it's me talking, of course. And I mentioned like, oh, do you remember the Band of Seven, which were like these characters that came in like later towards like the end of the show? And Kira, being the hardcore Inuyasha fan from back in the day, didn't know who I was talking about. And then other friend, who will totally remain nameless, except not really, was like, "Oh yeah, I know who they were. They were the guys with the blah blah blah, and they had the like bones in their names or whatever." And I'm just like, "How do you know that?" And he was like, "Because I saw those episodes and I know who those characters are." And I'm just like, "What? How?" you know. And then it reminds me of like in school, like some of my close friends who are artists. They're like, "Anime's lame, anime's gay, anime's stupid," except for Lupin the Third and Cowboy Bebop and Trigun and Dragon Ball, like not Z, but Dragon Ball, and this and this and this and this and this and this and this. And I'm like, okay, you like anime. I'm sorry, I hate to break it to you, but
Yeah, I mean that was still the guilty pleasure. Like on the Anime Abandon comment section, we still get people who admit to the various guilty pleasures, like something that we know is just going to be the worst thing ever, and we review it, and then smack in the middle of the comment section, it's like, well, I still kind of like it because it's my guilty pleasure. Like that's fine. We all like something that's horrible. And really, like guilty pleasure is just something that we don't need to attach to it. It's like, look, man, you like what you like, whatever that happens to be. What non-functional comes into why nerd culture and gamer culture in general has become this conversation is because what we have these really like non-functional people that like never mind the anonymity of the internet, never mind people kind of like sniping at each other from comment sections and things like that. I'm just talking about in our general day-to-day lives, especially and again, especially at conventions where there'll be the person that comes up and like they don't know, they don't get the idea that like people have to go, they don't have a sense of how to disengage, they're socially awkward in every possible way that they can be socially awkward. And the thing is that at a convention they're supposed to be, in quotations, safe because they're among their people, which they are. But we're all still like, so many people are like pointing and laughing at the Sheldon Cooper type behind their back, like, at least I'm not that bad. So the thing about like nerd culture becoming mainstream, which once something becomes mainstream, you never really get it back, not in its entirety. It's like, okay, that's it, it's out there in the open, the spotlight shining on us. um is that we have a much larger base of people, and more people kind of coming out of the shadows, and kind of pounding their chest and saying, I like SWAT Cats, or I like Mario a lot, and like that's great because it increases the community. But there are just so many instances where I feel like the community doesn't really support the worst of itself, and the idea of like you're only as strong as your weakest link, sort of thing.
I don't know. To me anyway, and maybe this is a really like overly optimistic view of things, but I truly feel this way. I get excited when there's something that I can share with people. If it's I don't know to say like if it's presented in a more mainstream way, or just like if it's being shown to a bigger audience or whatever. Like kind of looking back to the thing about Dragon Ball. When Kai was coming out and Nickelodeon was going to be airing it, of course there had to be a little bit of censoring for the broadcast version of it, but this new generation of kids was being introduced to more or less a version of the show that was being a lot more faithful to what the original story was supposed to be. And it wasn't even just that was exciting. I mean, for me, that was exciting because it's like, oh, cool, we're finally getting a dub that is accurate, and it was done very, very well. But more so about, oh, like, I get to share this with a new set of people that missed it the first time around, that didn't like it, or just didn't grow up with it because maybe they were too young or whatever. It's like, that is really cool to me that I get to, expand this outward with people. But I don't know, for some reason, some folks just, they see that as like, no, this was mine. Or like when any anime like gets licensed or something, and then like, oh, but I was watching it when it was underground and cool, when I was watching it illegally with fan subs. It's like, well, that's not fair. Just because like it's more people get to see, like, oh no, Kill the Kill is going to be on Toonami now. Oh, fuck everything. It's like, no, it's like, it's cool that more people get to see it and share in how great it is. It's great that more people get to like playing video games. It's great that more people like collecting comics, or even if it's because of the movies, the Marvel movies, or etc. It's like, I think at the end of the day, it is with a positive kind of thing. But I think people get kind of like territorial and aggressive about it, because it's like, oh no, my safe place, my special thing that was for me and my friends is being compromised now.
Which, like I've run into that. I've specifically had conversations about how people will invalidate someone else's fandom based on their personal time commitment, which the threshold of that is like, look, so long as you have not only, like if you have a reasonable amount of knowledge of whatever it is that you're talking about, and you're not talking straight out of your ass, and it's fine. But there's a difference between that and, I've got the entire technical manual right here, and let me tell you something about everything that it is that you don't know. Let me tell you something about what you don't know. Like invalidating someone else's love or passion or fandom based on your personal time commitment is just a shitty thing to do. And that also ranges into non-functional, because it's all supposed to be about love. Like you go out, like you are the nerd that you are because you love the thing that you love. So you don't go around, telling people, for instance, well, in the original it was over 8,000, Chris. You instead say, you instead, you teach. Like, well, we all remember over 9,000. Drummond was awesome, and Sabat picked up right where he left off, and it was even more awesome. But at the end of the day, like the original dialogue was over 8,000, and then that person learned something, as opposed to going off and being like, "Fuck you, nerd boy! Now I hate Dragon Ball and everyone in it."
I think it's not something that people should be ashamed of. I think that it's something that people should be more excited about to share with others. I always think that there is like a positive side of stuff like this to take away. But it gets turned into something negative. And I don't even want to say just because of the internet making it like, oh, we can be anonymous and we can be dicks about it or whatever.
Yeah,
but
yeah,
I don't
no,
know.
right.
I think if more people just like got to and maybe we're even heading that way. I would like to hope at some point we're probably just slogging through the gross, greasy, oily, disgusting part of it, to some extent. But I think that we might even be heading to a place of like, everybody can just be comfortable with liking whatever they like, and they don't have to they don't have to rationalize it. They don't have to do what like bronies did for a while, where it's like, yeah, I like my little pony. Yeah, what about it? You want to pick a fight with me? Well, I'll dox you and fucking make prank phone calls to you or whatever. It's like, we don't even have to get to that point of like bravado with it, And you can just be like, I like this thing, so there.
Yeah, like the shame is gone, even though I kind of think that the shame is what made for a lot of humble people in the first place. Like when you were separated by an ocean, you were just so happy to meet someone else that was like you. Like that's how you made fast, good, long time friends. It was the amount of separation, and like I'll never be able to take away the benefits of having such a readily available community on Twitter, Facebook, Tumblr, the internet in general. um, but the separation did kind of make for a different caliber of nerd, where we were all just like, oh, really? You guy? Oh, you know. Oh, come here, brother.
Come here, brother. Let me give you a big old fucking Hercule ass noogie. Okay, good.
Yeah, yeah. Like you were just so happy. It's like, dude, I'm going down to the store to get fucking like rip off VHSs. Let's go. Um, well, before any of the stuff was available, obviously.
And that's why we got married and had 10 beautiful children together, Mark. I think we're kind of reaching the end. So you got any last couple bits of wisdom to share with the listeners out there?
Yes. love each other. No, I'm serious.
No,
I'm
no, I'm serious, man. Let me try
like,
to.
and this is coming from the angry guy. From
Yeah.
like you can always see me being angry, but I'm serious. Like like the person next to you, like this is war in a certain sense, and that, not to say that it's like us against them, but it's always gonna be, like there always has to be somebody at your back, your nerdy friends, the nerds that you don't know, like just like it's not that hard to love each other, especially the most awkward of awkward kids. Like give them 2 extra minutes before you decide I've got to go and powder my eyes in the bathroom. Bye.
Love is all you need. And on that note, we're going to end. Mark, thank you for joining me. Everybody go check out Anime Abandon if you have not seen it yet with this gentleman at Ben at the Sage. Leave some comments about your thoughts on what the hell even is geek culture and how it affects you and et cetera. And if you have ideas for future Curblog topics, leave a comment about that too, or hit me up on Twitter, Tumblr, Facebook, et cetera, whatever you feel like. And we'll catch you next time. Say bye-bye.
Goodbye.
Hardier.
Goodbye.